U.S. Term Limits announced a new Utah state chair for its campaign. The group runs the largest grassroots term limits advocacy group in the country. Let's pass that mic and meet the new Utah rep.
I'm Tina Cannon. I'm with U.S. Term Limits, and I'm here to talk about term limits on our congressional delegations.
Tina, thanks so much for giving us some time. You've just been named the Utah Representative Chapter Director. What's the technical term?
I didn't really ask them what my technical term was. I'm just the state chair for this. So that means that I get to take all the blame and the credit, I guess.
Well, practically speaking, let's talk about term limits in this red of red states we call Utah. Doesn't seem to be a lot of will for it, although I do remember Orrin Hatch saying when he was running the first time many decades ago, what do you call a congressman who's been in D.C. for X number of years? You call him home, and then he stayed for over 40, as I recall.
That's exactly how I recall it. So it's very popular among voters, not so popular among incumbents, I should say. But that's the point of Congress. They're there to be a representative of the people, and this is one way to bring that representation back and to have that conversation about how to best represent the people and their desires. And this is one of those issues that is very, very popular among voters. And it's a bipartisan issue. It is almost as popular among Republicans as it is among Democrats. And we've seen that in our state legislators who have signed on to this issue to support it, that this is very well supported among both Republicans and Democrats in Utah.
Well, we don't want to let go of our offices, either as the office holder or the folks who help get them elected. It's always someone else's congressman or congresswoman that should go, right?
Exactly. We always seem to think that it's the other people who have the problem. And that's one of the beautiful things about an Article 5 conventions. Most people don't realize that there were 34 states who had limited their congressmen by 1994. And it was the Supreme Court who stepped in and said, no, in order for you to limit your congressional delegation, you have to do that through an Article 5 convention or through a constitutional amendment. So this process has started over since 1994, and we've been gaining speed and gaining momentum across the country as we get back to those core issues of how we best represent the people and not special interests or career politicians.
Tell us a bit about yourself, and then let's get to your game plan.
Talking about myself is always the hardest part. I own an accounting firm. I've spent my life doing taxes. That's how I got involved in politics. When I do tax, I don't ever follow logic. I became an accountant because I liked the logical lay of numbers and how they all worked out. And as I focused on taxation, especially business taxation, I found that that is not true of governmental policy. There is no rhyme, reason, or logic to tax. This is all a political issue. So that's really where my passion for politics comes from. It is an occupational hazard that I have to follow the whims and desires of new legislators. And I find I have to change my job with every president and every Congress as I find out what their new tax policies are going to be. And that's really difficult on small businessmen as they try to plan long term, as most people do in their lives, for where to focus and where to have their money to make the most of their business, to help it grow, to really grow and flourish as individuals and as business owners.
I understand you understand this issue firsthand. As a former member of the Morgan County Council, you were term limited.
Yes, we were. And so I got to see it up close and personal, got to experience what that looks like. When the state legislature outlawed term limits across the state, that is no longer true in Morgan County. But when I ran, it was against someone who had been term limited, or she stepped down, which gave the opportunity for other people to step in. And that created a turnover and an ability for more people to be involved in government and not just watch from the sidelines.
Well, I have no inference of what your political party is, but I'm all for term limits. So what is the game plan to help create better turnover, more representation through term limits in our country, let alone Utah?
So this goes through the state legislature, and this is a single issue Article 5 convention. This is exactly the same process that was used to put term limits on presidential on presidents, I guess you'd say, or presidential candidates, which are already term limited. So it takes 34 states, and Utah already have, as of September 21st, we had 25 legislators in the state of Utah that had signed on. So we're an uphill battle as we go. Hopefully, we can get them talking about this after we're done with redistricting, and then we'll continue on. I've met several of the state chairs across the country. It's gaining momentum in our surrounding states and across the country. So we're hoping we're all working together to get this as an issue on an Article 5 convention within the next year.
And that would be here in the state of Utah. Are you working through the organization as well to support other states and their efforts?
Oh, of course. So I just met with the representative from Arizona, also the representative from Georgia, and we had great conversations about how it's going in their states and the popularity of the issue. And what we're finding is, yeah, it's kind of one of those, oh yeah, that's not a hard issue. This is really very, very popular among voters, overwhelmingly popular among voters, which makes it very popular among legislators who want to stay popular among those voters.
It's a weird kind of, I don't know, catch 22, I think lawmakers find themselves in. The longer you're there, the more power you have to get things done, either individually or with a caucus of some sort. But the longer you're there, the longer you're there. In fact, you have a nice way of explaining it that has to do with 8-track tapes and Ford Pintos.
It's true. We have 9 um, members of our national delegation who've been there over 40 years. And if you go back over 40 years and the issues we're dealing with now, they're not necessarily the same thing or relevant. So I find that those types of things will make this an easier selling point for state legislators. As also, as we go forward, one of the things that doesn't get talked about very much and I'm passionate about as a woman in Utah politics is it changes the diversity when we put term limits on you, and you can see that through the 36 states that have term limits on their governors and 15 state legislators, that it increases the diversity and representation, especially among women. And that is an important issue for all of us, as because women don't get into politics to spend a career there. They're usually get in, get things done. And this is an issue that really works well for that.
All right. So, Tina, how can people get involved here in Utah? And do you have any events or a timeline coming up that we need to be aware of?
No events as of yet. We're watching what's going on across the state for large gatherings and those types of issues. But how you can get involved is to contact your state legislator, both House and Senate, and ask for their support on this issue. If you would like more information, you can always go to termlimits.com. Um, and find out more about the issue. Research, there's a great Q&A out there, questions and answers, facts on the issue, and who has already signed on, so you can know if your state legislator has done so.
Tina Cannon, the new Utah State Chair for the U.S. Term Limits Campaign.